Hi there, I'm Alex, and this is a quick tour of the Principal Component Analysis tool. That's a mouthful. So, Principal Component Analysis, or PCA for short, is a technique that reduces the dimensionality of the data while preserving the most important information. So, it's a little bit like taking a picture with a high-resolution camera. This camera captures a lot of detail, but the resulting image is very large and difficult to work with. PCA is like using a photo editing software to compress that image. So it takes less space on your computer, but still remains the most important details of that original image. This app does not work with images, it works with tables. So you'll start with a table that will have many columns in it, and then you can reduce the number of columns. PCA takes that original data and calculates what are called eigenvectors, and they represent the direction where the data set has the most variation. The biggest of these eigenvectors, or also called components, they translate as the stronger features in that data set that we need to preserve to make a good reduction of that data. In this tool, you'll start by importing a file into it by using this tab. By default, we already have some data set there, and this data set is a fun data set. It's about personality traits, where imagine you interviewed a collection of people and you capture some ratings on different personality traits that they have. So things like outgoing, sociable, hardworking, etc. So in that with the table, where each row is each person, and then each column is each of these personality traits. And in fact, there's something very interesting about this data set. There was a research done using this PCA technique a while back, using this type of approach on a much larger data set of personality traits. And they wanted to find what are the key personality traits that folks have, and then they reduced that original data set into the 5 in this personality traits model, which was a new model from this research. It's called the Big 5. And I'll show you an example of how that process happened. You'll start after you import the data. You'll have the import tab where you can go and have a quick look at how the data imported looks like. You can go of filtering, sampling down, etc. and so forth, and there's a little bit of cleaning there. The other next tab is Explorer. Here you can also look at things like correlation between each of those features. In this case will be personality traits, but I won't go too much into that. Let's jump directly into the model tab. In the model tab, it starts by creating a bunch of potential components that we could use. So different components of summarization in a way. So each one, it says that the component 0, the first one, it summarizes essentially 31.2% of the data. So if we would use just this one to summarize all data, we would represent 31.2% of that original data. If we add more of those components, of course, we end up summarizing more and more chunks of that data. So next question would be, how many of those should we use? The tool takes care of that automatically. There's a technique that I just do it in the tool to choose, and in this case it identified itself 3 different factors to use, or these components, and then we can go into building our model with 3 of those factors. Once we have the model, it creates a visualization of what original variables go into each component, or each of those 3 components in this case. And there's a couple of things you can have insight from that visualization, this table. The first thing is, how does it group variables together from that original data set? It's telling you, it's giving you a hint that these 2 normally come together with people, right, in this case, because it says that outgoing and sociable typically come together, hardworking and dutiful typically come together. So it creates that and puts it into the same, or one variable that represents both of them. The other bit of information you get from there is that how much of that original column contributes to that component, right? So here you see sociable is the vast majority of this first component. And going back to that model and that original research, one interesting thing is that in that original model, PCA1 got called as extroversion, which is representing these two. And by the way, these two make a lot of sense to come together, right? Like if you think of the folks, you know, when someone is outgoing, they tend to be also sociable. They're almost like synonymous, right? And the same one with this one, which says that intuitively makes sense what the model is doing. It kind of checks out, right? Confirms that, yeah, it sounds like the model is working, right? So PCA1 in the original research got called as extroversion, PCA2 got called as agreeableness, and PCA3 got called as consciousness, which is a sense of responsibility, which, yeah, this is just the naming we give to the components. We can give any name, and it will vary between different data sets. So see how we went in, practical terms, we went from 6 columns to 3 here. Once you have that, you can then, there's a few other things you can do. One of them is export that. So if you want to use that data further, and what it does, it adds the new components into that original data set. So essentially, this 3 now represent this original 6 data points. So it's kind of the summarization of them. So you could potentially take this and use, in each value is a rating for how strong is PCA2, etc. I hope this is useful. Have fun with it. Please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.